Welcome back. It's Dr. Jen Faboni, Doctor of Physical Therapy, better known as DocJenFit, the owner and creator of Gen Health, our app and platform where we try to bring you daily plans to help you get out of whatever pain or issue you might be having within your body based on your feedback. And today I'm going to give you a little flow for your hip flexors. So whether you've been having pain, tightness, you're feeling pinching in your hip flexor and you just want to dig it out or stretch it out, you're unsure what to do, these 3 exercises, part of this little flow, is something you're going to want to come back to often. Now, first of all, I have to say, get rid of any of those hard tools trying to dig into your hip flexor. Your hip flexor is so deep, it connects all the way into our back. And knowing that we have organs and a bunch of abdominal muscles that are surrounding it, you're not going to be able to reach it with a hard tool. In fact, it can do more damage than good. So I want you to focus on these 3 exercises, what you can do to open up the hip so that it's not feeling that sensation of pinching, and how we can start to gain more mobility in our hips in general. Now, if you want to know a little bit more about this hip flexor pain, why I'm saying to get rid of these tools and what else you can do about it, I highly recommend getting our tight hip flexor guide. So this is going to help you to understand exactly what to do, give you more exercises, and it's completely free. So we'll have that linked up so that you can just gain access to this hip flexor guide, have it to always come back to. But here's a flow I highly recommend you always come back to as well. These 3 exercises are some of my favorite ways to really open up the hip and reduce any of that tension in the hip flexor. Now, we're going to start with hip 90-90. And if you know that you are super restricted, like sitting cross-legged on the floor or just coming down onto the floor in general, your knees tend to pop up really high, I want you to get a cushion or pillow or something that you can elevate your bottom on. And you're going to do this hip 90-90 on a higher surface, almost so that it's more supportive in the front leg. And this 90-90 position, you really want 90 degrees in the front leg, 90 degrees between the legs, and 90 degrees in the back leg. That's the goal. Now, if you're having a lot of knee pressure or tension, go ahead and adjust your body as needed. But the goal is to try to find this 90-90 position. We're going to start by drawing the belly button up, and that's going to help to elongate that spine. And then you're going to think of this knee pushing back into the hip. So you want to think of this knee pushing straight back into the hip. And as you lean forward with that flat back, you're going to stop as soon as you start to feel that stretch into that hip. And you're just going to breathe. Okay. So I am actually limited in my hip range of motion externally on this side, leaning forward. So being on a higher surface, I still feel it. If you don't really feel it, that's where you want to make sure we're just not rounding, because you really won't feel it then. So think of that knee going back even more and really pull that belly button up and then come forward as much as you need to, thinking of rotating that pelvis forward. So we really want to stay as rotated as possible. Now, I am pregnant, so my belly, I do feel it coming into my leg. If you are, and the belly is a bit bigger, you can rotate just out just a little bit and still think of that stretch coming into the hip. So you can always adjust based on your body. Now, I'm still talking here, but we're doing 5 deep breaths. You've probably already done 5 deep breaths just with me talking. So we're going to come into the back leg now. And again, we're going to think of 5 deep breaths. And we want to think of rotating this as if I'm going to sit onto the ground with this back cheek. Okay. You really should feel that rotation deep around that hip. Now, when hip internal rotation is often like we're limited in hip internal rotation, that's where we start to have some of these muscles in the front of our hips tend to take over, especially when we're going into more squatting type exercises, and we might feel that pinching in the front of the hip. So gaining more access into hip internal rotation is going to be key. And then we'll switch to the other side. And again, it's just 5 breaths and 5 breaths. So thinking of that knee pressing straight back as I lift in my belly button, coming over, making sure I'm 90 all the way through. You don't have to be on this higher surface either. You could be on the floor, breathing, relaxing, trying to get deep into that hip. You might feel it down the leg a little bit, depending on where you're tight throughout that leg. You can use support with your hands. It's just 5 deep breaths. The more that you can take slow, controlled really deep breaths into it, the more you're going to gain into that mobility and start to open up and relax in that tension and pressure. Okay. So that's why I like to focus more on breaths rather than time, because especially when you do 5 slow breaths, now we'll go to the other side, rotating. When you're focusing on just like slow, deep breathing, that's where you're going to really melt into it more. And 5 breaths will be like 45 seconds already when you really take your time with it and slowly breathe. Okay. Traditionally, if you are looking at time, I like to be in the stretch for at least 1 minute to 2 minutes on each side. Okay. And that's really just, we're passively kind of opening up the hips. We're going to do a little bit of active movement now after this. Okay. 5 breaths. Then we'll move this out. And if you stayed in any position longer, that's totally fine. Okay. So being in all fours, and if your wrists hurt, you can always fold up the mat. You can hold on to weights, or you can place your arms onto an ottoman. Now we're going to kick the back leg so that you squeeze in the glute as high as you can. Now I want to make sure my trunk is not moving. So I'm going to push away from the ground, pushing my fingertips into the ground. Now squeeze my glute without arching. So my core is tucked in. Okay, squeeze. Now lift that knee as if it's going around a cone, and you're going to go as high as you can, and then bring that knee in toward that elbow without rounding in the spine. And now reverse it out. Bring that knee up around a cone, and then keep that bottom flat. That back is flat. Squeeze and come down. Let's switch to the other side. Again, press away from the ground. Keep that core engaged. And we're going to lift as high as you can. Squeeze that glute. We need the backside to kick on so that we're not feeling as much tension in the front. Rotate that knee up high as you can without rotating your hips. Bring it in and then bring it out, reversing it. Squeeze that heel up to the ceiling and come down. Try it again on the other side. Press into the ground. Squeeze, lift, rotate. We're going slow and controlled here. Really trying to activate around the glutes and the outer hips while you're actually stretching in your hip flexor by activating the other muscles. So press into the ground. Core is on. Squeeze. Lift that leg as high as you can. Bring it in. So we're getting hip flexion without compensation here. Working the hip flexors and then working the back of the hip into the glute and hamstring. 1 more on each side. Reach that heel. Do not bend in that back. Rotate that knee high, pulling it in without rounding. So we're really trying to just maximize and improve our entire hip mobility here with this exercise. It's slow, it's controlled, and that's how we start to improve in that range of motion and just in general, build our awareness and control within our body. So our hip flexors know when to cool out, chill out. Okay, now we're going to go into a long lunge. This is the last thing. We're going to activate the hip flexor as we're stretching the opposite side. So come into a full plank here. Okay, this one's hard. If you need to elevate the surface, you can be on a couch, a bench, something sturdy that's going to hold your upper body. Okay, you're going to think of bringing this knee up without moving the body. Bring it all the way up and foot up as much as you can. If you need to, you can scoot it up, but the goal is not to scoot it up. Now with that tailbone tucked under, exhale and melt into that stretch a little bit. And then push away from the ground and bring that leg back. Again, we're going slow and controlled here. We're working our hip flexor. Pull it up, pull it up, pull it up. Tuck that tailbone. Breathe in, breathe out. Bring that leg up. Push away from the ground. Don't cheat it. This is where we're really working those hip flexors. Oh, breathe in, breathe out. Get on stretch. So I'm giving you a little stretch, a little love, but we're also working them. Okay. Cause it's not just that they need to be stretched. I promise they need to be worked. And we got to work not only the front side, but the back side. And Everything working. Bring that knee up. Breathe in, breathe out. We just have one more on each side. Bringing it in. And I promise if you come back to this a bit more often, you're going to start to feel the benefits within those hips, and that's going to translate over to workouts. Now, again, if you want to check out our free guide on tight hip flexors and what you can do, what it means, the podcast that we have on it, I highly recommend snagging our guide. It's going to have all the information that you can have as often as you need to refer back to, because it's completely free and it's yours. So just sign up and get our free guide. If you have any more questions about the hips or pain that you're having in your body, please comment below and let me know. Don't forget, if you love what you're learning, I have so much more in stock for you. So hit that subscribe button, check out the other videos I've done in the past, and leave any comments of any suggestions that you have for videos in the future. And I can't wait to help you feel incredible and amazing within your body.